Yeah, yeah. Yep, please. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting for October 1, 2018 to order. Yeah, I know. First order of business is Pledge of Allegiance. Charlie, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Charlie. Item number 2, public forum. Anyone wishing to address the board in public forum? Hearing none, let's move on to item 3. That's to approve the minutes. The 3.1 would be the September 17th, 2018 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
And a second?
Second.
Comments, questions, changes, additions, deletions? Lou?
Two clarifications.
Yep.
I think on 4.1, in revenue, although it's interesting, it was in revenue. It says, Mr. Hoy noted that there was a big month for August claims. That should, even though the next paragraph touches on it, it should say August medical claims.
Medical
Yeah.
claims, that's fine.
And then I do have a question, I suppose, which we could bring up when, Mary Jane, hi there.
She's here.
So you maybe when you're reporting, you were talking about that why that month was out of whack. If you have any more information, it'd be great. If you don't, I get it.
She's not.
Okay, so, yeah, I know that's coming at you. So, and then on 4.2, under the paragraph that starts on the third page, really, top of the third page, first big paragraph, it says the recommendation is to transfer from unassigned fund balance, 150,000, to fund balance. That should probably say assigned fund balance,
It's committed.
Committed.
or committed.
Fund balance.
So then the word committed.
Fund balance
It
committed.
says fund balance committed to technology.
Oh, so you're thinking fund balance.
That's the way the line will read.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
So,
oh, I
yeah.
see, okay, got it.
Because fund balance is the
Committed.
major category, committed is the subcategory.
I got the language, understood, great, thanks, that's all right. Accounting module
101,
for today.
101.
Sorry.
That's all right, that's all right, that's why you're here.
And on the bottom of, in 4.2, the very last sentence, upon a motion made by Ms. Renner and seconded by Ms. O'Fready, but I think that's me.
Sandy.
I
All
know,
these- All these Sandys.
I
Oh,
know.
I see.
They just pop up.
Yeah, they just pop up, so.
I have one other item that I would like to see noted in the minutes. It's that same paragraph that Lou mentioned about the fund balances committed to various purposes. We discussed the fact that just because, that by committing fund balance, we're not authorizing expenditure of funds. Everything would
Right.
still need to come before the board.
It says that somewhere.
Does it say
Yeah,
that somewhere? Okay.
I was
couldn't
quoted as
find-
saying that.
You
I
did,
think, at
okay,
some
perfect.
point.
I think
I
it's
couldn't.
the next 9. It's not, has to explain the committee would also have to come before the Board of Selectmen finds to use the funds.
Okay, thank you. I did not, I overlooked that. Thanks.
It's a sentence all on its own, very last line of page
Yeah.
3.
Oh, yes, yes, thank you.
All right, anything further? Call question as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Item 4, Board of Ed Director of Operations, Cliff Gurnham, is here to, on 4.1, to discuss and take possible action to award RFP number 4-1718, on-call architectural and engineering services. Cliff's gonna give us just a little bit of background on it, and then, the recommendations coming to us.
So every 2 to 3 years, depending on the contract or length of contract, we go out for new proposals for on-call services. The on-call services are used both by the town and the Board of Ed. And we being the Standing Building Committee, try to pick a handful of firms that, depending on some of the upcoming projects, can give us options. So, meaning, we'll pick a couple of architects or a couple engineering firms or full service firms or civil firms, structural, that type of thing. So this case, we did go out to bid. We had a great response. We had approximately 31 bidders respond to the notice. The SBC, Standing Building Committee, did go through all those, reviewed them, and selected, several firms. I think about total six firms total. Out of those six firms, they picked a civil engineer, and that's what they do specifically, is civil engineering. They did a structural engineer, again, for some upcoming projects, an architectural specific firm, and then three full-service firms, we'll call them. So they have multiple disciplines within their service. So they can handle architectural, they can handle the engineering aspect. Some of them have civil, some of them have a structural. And with that being said, it may not all be specific to them. They may sub some of that stuff out, but we try to limit the numbers of subs underneath that company. It doesn't make sense to hire a full-service firm and then hire the same firm as a structural engineer. Then you're having the same person. You're not getting the variety, underneath the selection. So the end result, out of the 31 firms, we are looking at the following six firms. Do you want me to list them, or you guys already
Yeah,
have
just
them?
go ahead. List them, please.
And I'm not sure what order they came in
Right.
for you guys. Orion Architects, Michael Horton Associates, they're structural. Amente is an architectural firm. Antonazzi, I believe, is a full-service firm. Summerhill Civil Engineering, they do the civil piece. And then Silver Petrocelli is another full-service. So those are the six firms.
There's something I want to bring to
Yeah.
this board's attention. Antonazzi Associates, PC from Bridgeport. Mike Ailes, our current chair of the Board of Finance, is a principal, I believe.
Believe so, yes.
I believe with the firm. The process that he went through in terms of the ethics review, was there, my understanding is there was a letter that went to a review by the Ethics Commission related to the appropriateness of his firm participating in this program. And my understanding is he did get the approval and allowance from the Ethics Commission. Right?
Yeah, I think his firm and him have been involved in the
Right.
past.
Past they
Same
have been.
situation.
Right.
Good to point that out. The graph that's your next attachment doesn't seem to have
Everybody
all
in it.
six. There's only three of the.
Oh,
it's
if
very
you change
nice.
pages.
Missing a page.
If you go to sheets and change from one sheet to the other, there should be three sheets underneath that spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So half are on the first, almost the second half on the third, and then there's one on the third page.
Maybe
Right.
that's, this is two
how to
two things I'm gonna learn today.
Yeah, I
No,
don't know
I
how to
think
do
when
it.
it was converted
Yeah.
to PDF, it
Oh.
only did, when I converted it to PDF, it didn't
Didn't
convert.
convert.
Correct.
the following
You'd
pages.
have to do all
Right.
three. So I sent it, I believe I sent it to you in Excel.
Yeah.
because of that reason.
Because I had to put on board pack and PDF, and it didn't convert all three pages.
Okay.
It only converted the top.
Would you send that out?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Oh, it's
Sorry.
not your fault.
I should've-
It's not your fault. Any further questions or comments? All right, is there a motion? Hold on a second. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the six firms that have been recommended by the Standing Building Committee to act as on-call architectural and engineering services providers?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining, recusals? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Have a great day.
You do the same, please. Okay. Item 5, our environmental planner, Kevin McGee. Come on up. You want to bring your team with you? Come on. There's
team
strength in
from me.
numbers, right?
Yep, I have members of the Hazard Mitigation Commission with me, and the
Right, just
chairman.
for those in the audience, the board is removing from the table and taking possible action on a resolution adopting the 2018 South Central Regional Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan update. Is there a motion to remove it from the table?
So moved.
Second.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none. The item is removed from the table. Kevin, and when last we spoke, which was 2 weeks ago, I believe?
I believe it was 2 weeks ago, yes.
2 weeks ago, how time flies. There were some questions about the history of the process, et cetera. I think we have been forwarded some information. Tracy was kind enough to get us previous meeting minutes where the board the previous Board of Selectmen had made the commitment to move forward with the SCROG hazard mitigation plan. In the interim, at last week's South Central Council Regional Governments monthly meeting, within our packet were a couple of grant opportunities that are available through their state of Connecticut, but administered through each of the individual council of governments. And interestingly enough, flood mitigation assistance, federal insurance and mitigation assistance, and there's one other program, one other pre-disaster mitigation planning as well. But once again, these you need to have
The plan in place
The
to take
plan has to be in
advantage of
place.
this.
So,
Yep.
and we can talk about what our plans are relative to some of those grants. But Kevin, if you wouldn't mind, I know there were some questions. Do you want to go right to questions on this, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, I'll start. My concern was satisfied because I had a chance to browse through the document. My concern was that by adopting the resolution, which contained all these specific action items, some of which were very expensive, and they're not necessarily reflected in our capital plan and so on. So I wanted to understand exactly what we were committing to by adopting the plan. And there is, and I have a couple pages here I printed out, there's some clarification language in the document stating things like, subject to continuing review, evaluated and updated as a matter of routine plan maintenance, and as local community conditions or planning objectives change, and then some references to weighing available resources against costs and benefits. So it
Right.
seemed pretty clear that nobody could review the document and expect us to
Right.
follow it 100%.
Right,
It's
the
a
purpose of the
tool.
whole document itself is having action item or goals, and if grants come available, they're on the sheet. FEMA's approved those goals, and it makes it easier to go after those with the funding provided by FEMA or even another organization.
Understood. Yeah.
I think the value of having that plan without necessarily a commitment to the individual items is when individual items comes up, we can see that it is part of a bigger plan or
Right.
that type of thing.
Right, and your resolution
Yeah.
says pursue, which means as a
Right.
grant comes up, you follow after it. Doesn't
Right,
mean
but you don't want to
you're
be,
committed to it.
when individual grants come up, you don't want to be helter-skelter, saying, oh, this is a grant, so we got to
Yeah.
apply for it. It has to be a grant that fits within our plan, and I think that does make sense. And
Right.
And if something's important enough to be included in this plan, it should be something we talk about in the
Talk about it
spring
sometime.
when we,
Yep.
when we put together a
Right.
And they said Steve can go through the
Steve.
process here as chair.
I want to say one thing, which was that when we first were presented with the option of going through SCROG and doing a regional plan versus our own plan, I had reservations about that, Guilford wouldn't get the fair treatment, let's say. And, and Kevin's kept us abreast of what was going on in the process and made sure that that didn't happen. So I'm very pleased with this. And I want to say something about, the action items. We had something like over 130 before. Some of them, we simply said they're not going to be achieved or they're done. We combined some of them. And the commission, at our meeting earlier this month, or last month now, went through and we picked five and a half, if you want to look at it that way, and said these are going to be our top priorities. And and some of them are simply just trying to get things into the 911 reverse 911 system, things of that sort. We tried to say things that are more likely to be accomplished.
Can you, for the sake of people watching, can you
Yeah.
explain what the priorities are that you
Yeah,
identify?
yeah. I'm gonna try to do this without my glasses. Too lazy to get them out of my pocket, that's okay. I'll help it out a little bit. So reverse 911 coverage, encourage the public to register their phones. This includes especially the mobile phones. Encourage underground utility for new developments. The participation in the community rating system, which is a FEMA program. It's been sort of on hold right now because there isn't somebody in Town Hall South to really make this happen. It was on track. The rating system, if for things that are accomplished on the FEMA list, and I think you've all seen it at some point, the town gets points. The more points that the town gets, the more reduction that the homeowners can get on their FEMA flood insurance.
Steve,
What's the mag-
before you move on that,
Yeah.
I'm very interested in the comment you just made, that no one is available
Yeah, I
in
was just
Town
gonna
Hall
ask the same
South.
question.
This is the first that I'm learning that there are no resources available to assist in that process, so I would,
Okay, let me clarify, because that was being worked on by the assistant town engineer,
okay,
who's not here.
Gotcha.
And until we get a new one, and that's the person who would be handled.
okay, thank you for that clarification.
So, we do have a position designated for it, we just don't have the position filled,
Filled
but
right
we're-
now.
Correct.
we're
Correct.
working on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, I don't want to set off alarm bells.
And Mitch, we have the final job description available. We have, it went out, it was posted. We have candidates applicants and candidates we're gonna be reviewing, so that resource should be available relatively soon.
And just so everybody knows, the instruction manual is over 60 pages. So it's not a thing that,
Well, the report was huge, yeah, we appreciate it.
yeah.
For the CRS system itself,
Oh.
the instruction book for completing it is quite thick.
Yeah. Our other items, this goes in with the first one, so incorporate the dam failure areas into reverse 911. Inspection of town-owned dams, just make, that should, you know, it's sort of done informally, we gotta make sure now that it is done more formally. Living shoreline for Chittenden Beach, because we need, that's eroding. And number 30, public outreach for wildfire hazards. We haven't had a lot of that type of thing here, but we see what's going on in California and elsewhere, so we need to, make people aware of things.
Thank you.
Thank you. To Sue's earlier point, Steve, your anticipation of the resources needed to accomplish those 6 things, obviously the assistant town engineer was one resource. Financial resources and/or grant opportunities to work towards, are there any?
I'm not sure what resources we would need
Right.
or what grants would be available. The next step is to talk with with the departments that would be impacted,
Okay.
and then see what it would cost to do that.
Okay. Some of these grants that I mentioned earlier have some relatively short windows, and I had, on the heels of coming out of the SCROG meeting, reached out to a few of the department heads about some of these opportunities. So I don't know whether we have anything that we could get into the system for grants. And again, I think there are 2 phases to the grant applications. Sub-applicants, I'm not entirely sure, you guys are probably more familiar with how those work. Is it premature to suggest that we would be able to apply for some of these grants that have mid-October due deadlines on them?
If they're FEMA, we don't have this thing hasn't been approved yet, we probably won't be eligible for it
Okay.
yet.
What, you mean the resolution hasn't been approved, or?
the sign off by FEMA itself. We do the resolution, and then FEMA then.
FEMA's got to certify it before we
Certify
can,
it.
okay.
And the other towns too all have to complete theirs,
Complete, right.
unless maybe everyone's already done it. There were about half of them, it looked like, on the
Yeah,
website
they're
that were done.
slowly rolling in.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Any other questions? No?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution that is for the 2018 South Central Region Multi-Jurisdiction Hazard Mitigation Plan update?
So-
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Thank you very much.
About that, John.
Oh, yeah, I did look at the thing, the library's listed as a critical facility.
Okay. Item 6, appointments and resignations. So, last month you asked if we would be able to identify the source that these come from. Tracy and I have had some discussions related to this, and we will be notating or annotating that they're coming from either the Republican Town Committee, the Democratic
Great.
Town Committee, and/or independently nominated, which certainly folks are able to do.
Absolutely.
Right, and as, as evidenced by, our meeting 2 weeks ago, we did actually appoint someone who did not come through one of the respective town committees. And that's particularly important because there are a significant number, actually there are more unaffiliated voters in this town than there are either Democrats or Republican.
Right.
And to not allow those folks to participate in the process.
Exactly.
And I know that's what was probably driving some of your concerns as well, so. So Trace, in terms of these, as we go through these, there are the 6 of them that we have here today. Did all those come through the respective town
They
committees?
all have,
6, they do, yes, they're all
Right, right.
specific, yeah, that's
Exactly.
great.
Good.
I think it's good to make the point, again, because it'll reach a lot of citizens through being broadcast on GCTV about unaffiliated citizens, if they have interest in boards and commissions, have as much opportunity to be part of it. They don't
you
have to
don't
be.
have to be unaffiliated though. It's just somebody, just.
Anyone.
No, I
just
know, but I
apply.
mean, to just, people may think it's through the party.
You don't have to be plugged into either of the
Right,
parties.
right.
Right.
The-
Or you can choose to bypass that if that's just a
Yes.
roadblock to, getting yourself
Right.
onto a board where you want to do some good.
It's a
then
worthwhile
go
point
at
to
it.
make sure people understand that they're appreciated and there's access to these various boards and commissions. Thanks for bringing that up.
All right, that being said, item 1 is act on a recommendation to move Brittany Merles from alternate to regular member on the Guilford Lakes Golf Course Commission for a term to expire September 30th, 2022. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
Second.
Second. Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, motion carries. Act on a recommendation to move Anthony DeLuca from alternate to regular member on the Public Works Commission to fill a vacancy for a term to expire May 31st, 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second. Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Item 3, act on a recommendation to appoint Tim Sullivan as an alternate to the Public Works Commission to fill a vacancy for a term to expire May 31st, 2022. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
And a second.
Second.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Item 4, act on a recommendation to appoint Eve Ostrowski as an alternate to the Youth and Family Services Board for a term to expire September 30th, 2022. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And just one comment, not that we don't appreciate the work that so many folks on the Youth and Family Services Board do, but that's a committee that doesn't turn over very often. There's, obviously, someone has decided to step down. Anyway, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Item 5, act on a recommendation to appoint Linda Sofer as an alternate to the Youth and Family Services Board for a term to expire September 30th, 2022. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Second, call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Item 6, act on a recommendation to appoint Josh Hirschman to the Board of Fire Commissioners for a term to expire October 16th, 2022. I'd like to make that nomination. Is there a second? Thank you. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Item 7, request for use of town property. And the first is a request from the Guilford Garden Club to place a sign on the green advertising its Christmas boutique and candlelight walk on Broad Street taking place
Great to be
November
here,
30th.
Joe.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
boy.
Talk about October 1st come sneaking up on us, huh? And I just, that's such a wonderful evening. It really is. It's classic. It's a classic. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Act on a request from the country school to place a sign on the green advertising its open space taking place October 28th, 2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, recusals, hearing none, motion carries. Item 8, correspondence. Anybody have anything? Actually, I do have one item of correspondence that was passed out to you earlier, which is related to the consent order from DEEP. And I'm not sure we're gonna necessarily talk on that today, but we need to be prepared. I think at the October 15th meeting, we may even have our environmental council in attendance to talk about the strategy related to that document. And that's about as far as I want to go in terms of discussion today.
Can I ask this question related to that very point you're making? Is this letter public record?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
However, our discussions related to strategies related to negotiating with them
Are.
our
Executive
executive session.
Understood, so I just want to make sure I understand the scope.
Settlement of claims.
Claims.
Got it. Mhm.
Legitimate executive session.
Session, correct. Okay, committee reports. Lou?
I feel like it's getting
Zeroing
closer.
in.
I have it penciled out. I gotta just get it down to a presentable form and.
And share it with
We'll
us.
share it with everybody.
Wonderful.
At the most recent meeting of the Housing for Economic Development Plan Committee, which was last Tuesday, the committee voted to accept the plan drawn up by Patrick and Associates regarding the feasibility of the Rollwood Woodruff property. And the next step is to actually bring it before this board, and we're hoping to do that perhaps on the agenda of the November 5th meeting.
Okay. And just as a follow-up, we have a meeting,
Yes, we have a meeting on the 11th
11th.
at 11 o'clock, and
Let's
is
assume-
Pam gonna be, good. Okay. With George, myself, and you and Pam.
wonderful. Okay. Did everyone did we distribute a copy to everybody electronically?
Of the housing?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
All right, we will get a copy to
Okay.
everybody. I've had the opportunity to start to take a look at it.
If anybody else on this board wants to come to that meeting on the 11th, well, we can't, then it's a meeting?
Then it constitutes a meeting.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyone else on this board is free to call me or George if you have questions about it. I mean, there'll be,
Absolutely.
an opportunity on November 5th as well.
Yeah,
right.
That's the whole point.
Exactly. Okay, all right, thank you, Sandy and Lou. All right, just a quick update under old business. After we had approved the various projects, the moving of funds from unassigned fund balance to the committed categories, the Board of Finance approved all 3 of those. So, actually at 11 o'clock today, I have a meeting scheduled to finalize, or at least attempt to finalize, the charge for the Guilford Safe Streets Mobility Task Force. Karen and I will be reaching out to the 15 or so self-identified volunteers for that committee to gauge their continued interest, and also try to identify potential officers, because we're going to need a chair and a vice chair on that. So, so that we're hoping to get the formulation meeting of that committee done before the end of this month. All right. Next up, we have been talking about, we've been in the process of the audit for the land use department's operations, technology, and purchasing procedures. We have a draft report, which I will be happy to share with you folks as soon as I'll send it to you anyway. And you guys can weigh in to see if there's additional clarification that may be needed on it before we accept the final. But there are some interesting, interesting things that have come about as a result of that study. A series of recommendations of note, little surprise, to explore, implement, and train additional permit software capabilities within Munis to more effectively use the system. And what was nice to see was the town should attempt to better utilize the software that is currently in place before seeking a different outside software solution for permit management. So it sounds as if there's process mapping, training, and user, in particular user training that needs to take place in order to more fully utilize the service. So there's just a couple other things I wanted to bring up. I can use my stickies here.
High-tech world that we are.
I know. I'll tell you a story about the high-tech presentations at one point. There are also some potential changes relative to how we manage the internal operations, which you'll see in there as well. I don't want to, and you'll see that shortly, to better maximize the resources that we have there. And then lastly, and this is one of my favorites. I think I may have shared something similar to this. This is the flow chart that demonstrates the existing permitting process. Okay.
A lot of boxes on
Everybody's
that.
gonna
An
talk
awful lot of
everybody.
boxes, an awful lot of movement, and there are apparently a lot of steps in there that don't necessarily need to be there, because not everyone needs to touch every permit and application that comes through. So, this is the future state, which is somewhat streamlined. So, I'm thrilled to have gotten this back, and so I'll get this out to you guys, and gals, excuse me, that's a terrible term. I will get it out to the balance of the board, and then would look for some areas where you want more clarification.
Great.
That's encouraging that we have this, we might not have to buy as much new software as we had thought we might.
Exactly.
And the important thing is identifying the
Right.
training and using what we have.
Right, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna be very honest, in my discussions with the staff over there, over the past, particularly early months of my engagement, was they felt as if they did not have the proper tools or training to effectively use it. So, at one point, and they're not shooting at anybody, but at one point, I think we largely implemented the capacity to better manage the financial aspects of what's going on over there. It wasn't looked at, it was more for the Munis finance module to be able to interact with the finance side. So, we will obviously be charged with identifying what our employees need and providing that kind of training, so. Good. All right. The next one I just wanted to talk a little bit about, for those of you who have not read the Guilford Courier, the water main project for Mulberry, Tuttles, and Longco has run into somewhat of a problem, and if I could just summarize, we had a bidder, we had selected a low bidder, and
To do
That-
the actual building of the infrastructure.
building the infrastructure, digging the holes, burying the pipe, putting the connections in, the teeing the connections in, et cetera. That bidder's price was about a little over $1 million more than the original projections based on the engineering firm and the water company's evaluation of this project back in 2016. Now you can say there's some measure of inflation involved, but not to that degree. So, having identified the the shortfall. I reached out to Sean Scanlon, and between the two of us, we were able to get some commitments from the legislative leadership and the governor's office to participate in the most recent round of bond commission funding. And actually, at one point, we had approval for nearly $1.3 million. It was pretty good. We were doing the happy dance on a Friday because we had gotten the word. But then at about 4 o'clock, about 4 o'clock, the floor fell out from under us.
The rug came under our feet.
Yeah, exactly. The trap door, because the contractor pulled his bid. We went through a process of evaluating whether or not we were going to call the bond, the bid bond, but that wouldn't have gotten us enough money to get to the next low bidder, which happened to be about another $1.9 million. So in fairness and in transparency with the folks up at the state, we let them know that that happened, that we didn't have a firm bidder. The state and the governor's office committed to keeping us on the bond commission because they believe that this is a matter of public safety, and there's a public health component and crisis to this. So their commitment was they would give us something, which they did at the I think the October 21st bond meeting, $450,000. So we also have a commitment that there will be subsequent rounds of funding that we would be eligible for. There are no guarantees, like most things in life, but we had gotten a 1.3 at one point, and there's an opportunity for us to go back and get that, and hopefully more if the bids come in higher. To that point, we are rebidding the project because the project the project needs to be rebid because of the discrepancy in the range in terms of the prices. We also think there are some advantages to bidding it out this time of year as opposed to when we did it in the spring. Just general contracting cycles tend to be better for folks looking for business at this time of year. We are also looking at a couple of scenarios to make this more attractive and drive the cost down. In consultation with the water company, there are some things that we're looking at doing, which is one, extending the window of time to complete the project. With a shortened project, some of these firms have to dedicate all of their resources to do so, which means they can't be doing other jobs at the same time. There was also very interesting components to this. In one or more of the bids, the flagman that you need to direct traffic had a line item carrying $600,000 in terms of traffic and flagman stuff. In conversations, I said we could hire 2 people at $50,000 a year for the years. It just seems strange.
Close roads periodically, different pieces.
You could, yeah, and that's why I think maybe.
I mean, it is as if those roads are passed through other than residents.
Right. So we actually have a meeting on Friday with our engineering firm, PIM, and the water company. I think that's it, and Janice, our town engineer, to look at ways to mitigate some of these extreme costs that we saw there. So, yes. And we are intending to put the bid back out on the street.
It is on the street.
It's on the street already.
As of Friday. And I just wanted to clarify one thing I tell the public is that at the time, way back in whatever year it was, you have the year, Dennis Johnson obtained 3 independent bids so that we had an idea of the potential cost of the project. So there were independent quotes that were obtained. And then we hired a consultant who reviewed those quotes, and throughout the high one, throughout the low one, and came up with a number that seemed reasonable at the time. And that's what we used to go out to referendum. So when we did get the bids in the summer, as Matt said, except for that one low bid, the others were way off from those estimates. So the hope is if we can limit the scope a little bit or tinker with it with the water company and our consultant's expertise, that we can hopefully get more in line with what we originally thought the cost might be.
Did the low bidder cite a particular reason that they?
Yes, there were two stated reasons. One, they had made a clerical error in applying rates for a certain point, a certain portion of it. It actually was the removal of the fill and stone and disposal of same. It was supposed to have been $150 a cubic ton or whatever it was, and they had, and whoever transcribed it onto the bid document put 50. And then there was some pricing, there was pricing mistakes made on the materials, which is the pipe and the elbows and the T fittings, which, quite interesting, it was a red flag to us because their costs were 50% lower than for that hardware, which was an optional bid because the water company could have supplied that equipment to us, and we would have netted off of the $1.5 million they gave us. But the water company looked at that thing and said, we can't even get it for that price. And they're the largest consumer of those materials in the state.
And just so you know, we did have Jeff D'Onofrio,
Yes.
our construction counsel, review it in great detail, advised us about our rights with respect to that, and really kind of advised us to rebid and move forward. So that's what we did.
All right. Little status. Anybody else with old business? New business? Public forum? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, recused, seeing none, motion carries. Thank you all.
Very good.
Good.